thought of this new segment that I wanted to do, and I'm calling it Always, Never, Sometimes, Regret. So here's the rules. What piece of gear do you always bring on a trip? That's number one. Number two, what piece of gear do you never bring on a trip? Maybe you had an experience and you're like, I'm never bringing that again. Number three, what piece of gear do you sometimes bring on a trip depending on the trip? And then lastly, on this particular trip for the two Andys and myself, what do you regret bringing on this trip? It's some piece of gear that you have and you're like, I wish I'd have left that in the vehicle back at the trailhead. So I ask Metro on the Move, and I ask Andy Parrish Outdoors to be a part of this. Right. I'll start with Metro on the Move. Andy,
yep.
What piece of gear do you always bring on a trip?
The piece of gear that I always take with me on every trip is Body Glide. Anti-chafing, gotta have it.
That's a very important piece of gear. Chafing is not a funny subject. It's serious.
It burns.
It burns.
No bueno.
No bueno. Let's go to Andy Parrish. Andy?
My always is my Be-Free water filter.
And it works well for you?
Works well for me. Gotta have good water. Gotta stay hydrated. So I always have Be-Free.
And what made you get that?
It's just easy use.
This
is one for me that the flow rate's good. It doesn't last quite as long as the Sawyer Squeeze for me, but the convenience of just being able to walk down the stream, scoop up a bottle, and be good to go.
For my always, it's actually gonna be my Hilltop Packs food bag. Gotta have a food bag, and it's waterproof. And look, these guys also have Hilltop Packs food bags. So I think I'm on solid ground here, that this is a good piece of gear that everybody has. I see most everybody got them, right?
Legit.
Yeah.
Hilltop Packs.
And also, I'm gonna say my BRS 3000 stove. I keep thinking this thing's gonna die. I actually have a second one in my food bag as a backup because they only weigh just a couple of ounces or something. And it won't die. The thing will not die. So that's my two. I got two always. Now let's go to what piece of gear do you never bring on a trip? Something happened and you like, that is out of the question or realm of bringing on a backpack trip. Now I'll go to Andy Parrish Outdoors. What's your never?
For me, it's full-on sleeping bags. I moved away from them a few years ago. I've never used them anymore. I've gone to backpacking quilts. I just find them more user-friendly. I love sleeping in the hammock. It's great for the hammock. It's great for sleeping in a tent as well. It's a little lighter weight and it's plenty warm for me. So no more sleeping in that mummy bag where I feel like I'm super restricted.
Hey, that's a good one. So what I never bring is something he says that he sleeps in, and that's a hammock. Years ago, I had a bad experience in the Sipsey Wilderness where I had a night terror because I was in a hammock. I felt like I was claustrophobic. I thought there was this hillbilly guy running through the camp trying to kill me. I jumped out in a night terror and ran around the camp. That was the last time I ever slept in a hammock. So I never go with a hammock anymore. Metro, what do you got? Never.
Footprint. I feel like they are useless. The Dyneema on my tent is sufficient enough, so I don't put a footprint down anymore. That's my never.
That's our never. Now let's switch to number three, which is a sometimes. What piece of gear do you sometimes take depending on the trip or the environment? Metro, what do you sometimes take?
I sometimes take my pee bottle because sometimes I don't feel like getting out in front of the crowd, especially at a populated campsite. Sometimes I feel like just peeing in my tent.
Yeah, and I've got one too, and they're amazing. No more tripping on the guidelines when you go out of the tent, right?
The only problem is, you better be a good, good shot. Have some good aim, because that can ruin the rest of your trip.
Once you pee in your tent, outside of that, you got a problem.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bad trip.
Okay, that's
sometimes.
Your sometimes. Now go back to Andy. What is your sometimes?
My sometimes is what I brought this trip, which is my hammock setup. I love it, but it's not great for every single trip that I go on. Sometimes when I go out west, the trees are a little more sparse and I gotta bring a tent. So The hammock, I love to bring it, but it's only a sometimes thing.
Yeah, your sometimes is my never. but I have a story behind it. It's not because I just dislike hammocks. I'm not a like anti-hammock. It's just that experience I had, which is my never. But my sometimes is my Patagonia R1. I've had it many years. Yes, I had to sell a kidney to buy it. They're kind of expensive. Yep. For what it is, but I carry it a good many times. It just depends on how cold it's gonna get and if I need that mid layer, but sometimes I just go with the bottom layer and a puffy. Sometimes I bring this, my R1, because I think it's
super reliable.
Yeah, I think it's reliable and I really think that they're warm. So that's my sometimes. Let's go to the last category, which is regret.
Yeah.
What is the piece of gear that you brought on this trip that you regret? And I'm switching back to Andy Parrish Outdoors.
All right, so I got a good one. Open my electronics bag and I've got my air pump for my inflatable pad for when I'm sleeping on the ground in my tent, which I'm not doing this trip. So I brought this maybe to fan the flames or as a light, but I regret having this in my pack.
So that's Andy Parrish's regret.
Yeah.
Switch back over to Metro. What's your regret?
These gloves, because the temperatures I thought was going to drop into the 40s, it's not going to drop into the 40s. It's going to be 50s plus, so this was dead weight. So gloves on this trip would be my regret.
It's not the shirt?
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? That is true, because I am wearing a Jolly Gear shirt, and it is heavy polyester, and I thought it would be a little bit more breathable. And again, with the temperatures being in the 60s today, I was sweating. So I do regret wearing a long sleeve shirt in the beginning of, well, middle of spring, getting a little bit warmer. So not the best idea.
You know, I think that a lot of people that are watching this video and they make it to this part of the video, they watch it long enough, there probably a lot of regrets are going to be a clothing item.
Yeah.
Depending, because they thought that the temperatures were this, or it was this, or it was this, and they just regret bringing an extra layer or something. But you never know.
Yeah, you don't want to be too cold because that can also ruin your trip as well.
My regret is bringing the GSI coffee cup. I like this mug, it's great, but I mean, I've got that Tokes 550. I can just make coffee in it. So it really is kind of bulky and an extra item that I don't need. I do like it because it's insulated, but I don't need it. So I regret bringing it this trip. So that's our always, never, sometimes regret. I think I may start a new segment with this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, comment below and tell me what your always, never, sometimes, and regret are in your backpacking trips. Thanks for watching this video and being part of As the Crow Flies Hiking. I hope you will please check out Metro on the Move, one of my good friends and a great channel, wonderful content. And Andy Parrish Outdoors.
Not so much, but you know, check it out anyway.
Great guy, and I was so happy that he invited me on this trip. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next adventure.